Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So quick review. In our first video, you met the people who are going to be helping you through this journey, right? Dr. Hogan, myself, Dr. Johnson, and our own amazing Professor Smith. So we're so glad that you're still hanging in there with us because we want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into something we mentioned in the last video, which was the idea of the elements involved in a lesson plan. An effective lesson plan really does understand that depending on, like Professor Smith said in our last video, the grade level, the content area, and even the students in your class and what you're trying to accomplish, it's going to shift and change. For our purposes within the unified program, the idea is for you to have practice writing as many different kinds of lesson plans as you can. However, within those very differing kind of approaches to things, we do want to remain kind of consistent with some main areas. And today we're going to focus on three of them, which are the essential question, the learning objective, and the standard. So let's jump right in. Our essential question should be an actual question, don't write a statement, that is a big idea, big idea. It takes the meaning of maybe one lesson, maybe multiple lessons into the real world and how it is applied. So it encourages deeper thinking, and it might stay the same throughout multiple lessons. One time in social studies, our essential question was, what makes a leader effective? Well, that essential question stayed up forever. And we studied everyone from Gandhi to Hitler to Nelson Mandela. Were they effective? What made them that way? But the essential question allowed them to keep coming back to a central place in their thinking and their understanding. So along with essential questions, we want to make sure we understand what a learning objective is. And although this might seem a little painful right now, stay with me. We want to watch this video. It's just about 2 minutes long about what it means to write an effective lesson objective. Then we're going to move forward and look at how to format that lesson objective. So let's watch.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Writing Lesson Objectives. Written objectives should be characterized as SMART. S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R relevant, and T time bound. Up first, specific. It's important to narrow in on what it is exactly you want your students to do. Objectives should be well defined to students, observable to teachers, and describe the who, what, when, where, and why of the lesson. On to measurable. Objectives must be measurable so that teachers know if students are actually learning the objectives. So, make sure your objectives can be evaluated. Third, achievable. What you don't want to do is set your students up for failure. Be sure that your students are academically ready to complete the objective. Remember, you want to set your students up for success. Next up, relevant. The lesson objective must be relevant to students' academic success and relevant to previous and future lessons. Objective must prepare students for standardized testing, relate to larger ideas, and build on prior knowledge. And lastly, you want your objectives to be time-bound. Set a time limit of 1 or 2 class periods. When setting time-bound objectives, be sure that there is enough time and you have an assigned date for completion. Right now, I'm going to outline a fully written objective for a typical lesson. 80% of students will be able to solve systems of equations using the elimination method by the end of the period and assessed using a 5-question multiple choice quiz. So, right now I want to say thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here because the way that he wrote that lesson objective is actually a little different and opposite of the way we approach things here at Ottawa within our School of Education. So did you see how he started his lesson objective with 80% of the students? We actually want to write an objective for 100% of our students. What we want to say is that 100% of our students will have a percentage of knowledge within whatever area we are assessing or teaching. And we remember that if we have students with learning disabilities or language issues, we are going to make differentiated instruction and accommodations for them so that they will still be able to show the same percentage of understanding and growth within things. So let's jump ahead to how Ottawa asks us to write our lesson or learning objectives, sorry. Remember, this is very specific maybe to Ottawa, but it's a good place to start because it gives you some components you need. This is not going to be required in every one of your unified classes. This is not something that is university-wide and enforced. Instead, it is where we ask you to start, a foundation. So if you're just really unsure, this is the safe place to come back to. Notice that there are 4 components of this learning objective: the condition, the audience, behavioral verb, and the criteria. So the condition says what happened before the assessment occurred or before the information and learning occurred. So this one is after reading the story. SWABAT is an acronym that you'll hear lots. The student will be able to. That audience typically stays in all learning objectives unless there's something specific. Maybe you're writing a lesson just for a small group of students or for a specific level of understanding. Then our behavioral verb. So remember back to that first video when we talked about Maslow over Bloom. We're now working with Bloom's taxonomy. What is the student going to do to show that not only was the lesson effective, but their learning has truly occurred? For this example, they said create. What are they going to create? A timeline. It's going to have at least 8 events, and they're going to have 80% accuracy within that timeline. So they may not get it 100% correct, but they are going to be able to make a timeline. So let's do a quick review of some of those Bloom's taxonomy verbs that we're referencing. Please remember that within Bloom's taxonomy, the verbs, there is an updated, newer version of these. I just like this one because it's in the shape of a light bulb. But the point being, both the old and the new Bloom's taxonomy focus on higher order thinking skills. You'll see that as an acronym in some lesson plans. It'll actually say HOTS. And what they're looking for is what higher order thinking skills are you utilizing? They also refer to this as depth of knowledge. How deep is their knowledge going? So you'll notice at the very bottom, knowledge is the first one, where we're arranging, defining, recalling, selecting, identifying. So that's a student who can identify something, all the way up to evaluation, where we are comparing and contrasting. We're discriminating, justifying, explaining, evaluating content. You see how that higher order of thinking really shows depth of knowledge. So let's look at a couple of examples of verbs that are not measurable. We don't want to use these. Appreciate. Think back to the SMART goal that he referenced in the video. Appreciation cannot be measured. It can't be defined. It can't even really be observed. They can really understand, be familiar, understand. Understand can work if it's demonstrated in a certain way. And you'll learn more about that as you go into your writing lesson plans more often. We would never teach someone to enjoy something. How do we measure that? Okay, so avoid these, stick with the ones that you know in the Bloom's taxonomy. So here's a couple examples from those 2 different levels. The very bottom level, knowledge. After reading the story, the student will be able to list at least 5 main events in order they occurred with 80% accuracy. It's pretty good. Moving on to comprehension. After reading the first part of the story, the student will be able to predict, if you hear how that verb changed, what will happen in the next section, giving at least 3 reasons for this prediction with 100% accuracy. Did the percentage of accuracy have to change? No, but for this person's lesson, they decided, you know, we've done this story 5 times. They should have 100% accuracy at this point. You know your students, you know your content, so write your learning objective according to what is really going to be measured and learned. I suggest for my students that there be no more than 2 learning objectives within a lesson. I really prefer just 1. This is for 1 lesson, not for the whole day. We're not trying to save the world's problems. We are teaching 1 specific skill. So Professor Smith, we've got these learning objectives, but we have other pieces that we have to satisfy within the standards that are set. So can you talk to us a little bit about those?
Sure. So we are going to share the screen and post disabled share screening.
Oh, shoot. I forgot to change that. Hold on. We got it. And somehow it muted you and I don't know why. There. Good. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so I am going to pull this up and I don't know where it went on my,
It's okay, you'll find it. So this is the Kansas State Department of Education. We say KSDE all the time. But within KSDE, they have a page where all the standards are listed. But Professor Smith understands more about how to find these and where they are as soon as she finds it. There it is, in that second tab over next to the line.
and I click that. See, I've got the Zoom. Oh, there. Oh, I have a pencil. I don't want the pencil. There we go. Here we are. Okay, so when you are taking your core areas like math and ELA, you're going to go up here to ksde.org. When you go on the Kansas State Department of Ed, up here at the top, it's just much easier to use these buttons to find what you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking for social studies today. I can click the S and it will take me, and I can go down here to social studies. And when I click on that, it's going to pull up all of the standards that I have. This is the place you go. As you go down, when you click on each of these, it's going to take you to each specific grade level. It's going to take you to the specific standard that you're going to use. This is your first step. We work from standards first because they're the broad standards. Then we get into the objectives that go with it. Your objectives need to fit the standard. You're going to see this whole thing, and your assessment, then the whole lesson has to go together. So if I am looking on social studies, these are the big standards for every grade level, K through 5. And then with each one within each one of these are the specific standards for each grade level. So I can do the same thing up here for math. I can do the same thing for English language arts, and I can do the same thing for science. When I go on the S again, and I look up the science, you are going to see that it is going to pull up the next gen science standards when you get on this. So you also could go on Next Gen Science and find the very same standards, or you can find them here. But this is where you need to start. So in our world looking on here, math and ELA are considered Common Core. That's what we're using right now. But KSDE, the state of Kansas, we could change that anytime, just like any state can change their standards at any time. Standards come under review on kind of a cyclical basis, and that could change at any time, and Ottawa would change that at any time, what we would use in our classes to keep you current.
How much, can I ask you, how much time do you say people probably need to spend being comfortable with even discovering where the standards are? Do you know what I mean? If they've never done this before, what time do they need to give to this as they just kind of explore and poke around?
So your word explore is the key thing right there. Before you are actually forced to do lessons, I would take some time, like you browse the internet for lots of things and you can get sucked into that rabbit hole of Pinterest. You should get sucked into the hole of standards on KSDE.
Love that.
This is a complicated website. You could see by the beginning, there are lots of things on here for all grade levels, pre-K through 12. So I would take the time now. I would not take the time to get specific to a grade level because you don't know where you're going to be. You could have an experience in second grade and one in fifth, and then get a kindergarten teaching job. But overall, learn to use this website where things are. And
just understanding how to navigate it, right? Like just how to even begin. Can we see down into maybe one of the language arts or the social studies, since it is?
Let's go back.
Because I wanted to show them how it has those numbers and the letters, and then it goes down even further, because
let's go into the social studies right here. And let's go down to, let's just try the first one, because that's what you would do when you were exploring this website. Anyway, you're just going to get into each one of these. So you're going to usually get these documents, and they're going to, like this right here, 247 pages, as long, you know, as long as this one is. It's going to go through all of the different, you know, how these were arranged and how they made these. And so let's just go to right here. So here we are on kindergarten. And so it's going to tell me my focus standard 1. Remember at the beginning, every grade level is going to have choices, have consequences, but then they're going to be different per. And then they're going to have the benchmark standards. And here they are. You're going to have these numbers that are on here. For me, and probably for you for your whole life, you are not going to memorize what all of these mean. So I don't ever just put 1.1 on my lesson plan. I actually write out what the standard is because I would have no idea what 1.1 is. So I can go through and I can pick these exact things that are on here. This will get way more specific as you go through this website, and they will explain. Sometimes they will give you examples of what that is. Sometimes they will give you even resources where you can go to find those. And each one of these are a little bit different. So social studies is not set up exactly like math. Math has a lot of standards. You'll see lots and lots of things going on.
And I remember the ELA one, we had 2 4-inch D-ring binders just to house everything, because within that, they have an R for reading, a W for writing, a C for comprehension. And then under that is hundreds of standards.
Right.
I just appreciate what you said about how this is the place to start, though, because it helps direct your lesson and direct your lesson objective.
Right. And like even this one right here, like, look, it gives you big ideas. So obviously these are going to be your vocabulary words that you're going to teach in that. Here are some essential questions, or some of these could be turned into essential questions for what you're doing. So here's the one thing I do want to tell you about this is that when you get out and you are teaching, you're going to use some textbooks. You're going to have some textbooks within some of these areas. Your textbook is not your curriculum. Your textbook is a resource that is being used to deliver the curriculum and the standards that were set by your state and your district. So you kind of think of the state, I have to do what they're saying. I have to do what my district says. I have to do what my grade level says. And then I get to bring myself into it. So there are different layers that need to happen. So do not always put down every exact little thing that a textbook would tell you, because that is not your curriculum. This is your curriculum, your standards and your
Love that. Preach it. Girl got on her podium. I love it. I just want to do a slow clap. Like mic drop. This in the house. I know we've gone over a lot and we've given you a lot of examples and everything else, but just remember that all of this is going to become much more comfortable and clear as you use it. And that's why the unified program is set up the way it is, so that you come to class, you use these resources, and then you have a chance to talk with your teachers if you're currently a para in a school, and go to them and say, what resource do you use? How do you find standards? How do you, and you're starting to ask better questions and in turn getting better answers, because you're getting an inside view into what your classroom teachers are up against.
Right.
Anything else before we go?
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
You're also going to hear districts and teachers and principals talk about power standards. Power standards are these same standards, but which ones are the most important that we have to teach? An example is this year. Olathe started later, just like most of the schools did, and COVID with last year kind of concerns. We had to pick the most important things that students needed to learn this year. And so I am focusing on those as a first grade teacher. I'm not ignoring those other ones, but power standards are the main ones that kids need to know. So if you hear that, that's what that means.
Love that. Yeah. Boy, so much lingo, so many acronyms, so many things. But don't worry, we're here for you. We're going to walk you through it and you will make it, and all this will become very comfortable and very second nature. So thank you so much for your time, Professor Smith. You're amazing and love your insight. Love hearing your passion for everything. And 1, 2, 3, here we go.
Thanks.
Bye.